Welcome to God Encounters. This is part 2, so if you haven't seen part 1, I encourage you to watch that first. But today my guest is Tani Zarelli, and we kind of stopped at a place where we want to pick up from. She has quite the background, a very busy lady that has had her hand in many things from foster care to event planning to the political arena and working with Israel. So help me welcome Tani back to the show today.
Thank you.
So glad you're here. So kind of where we left off was we were talking about some gifts. I believe that everybody's given gifts from God.
Mm-hmm.
So some of your gifts are, it sounds like, first you talked about hearing the voice of God, which I believe every believer should be able to. Some hear a little stronger than others, which I think is your case. So hearing, but you also are a seer. So for those of you that don't understand what a seer is, the Lord will reveal things in the spirit so you can see things that the normal eye wouldn't be able to see. Sometimes that's in shape of a vision. Sometimes it's just a picture. It can be different ways, but the Lord will just suddenly reveal supernaturally to you something that you would not be able to see with the natural eye. So that's another gift that Tani has. And it sounds like you have a strong sense of discernment.
Yes, I do. And that I rely on it. Yeah.
I don't want to say I'm jealous, but I pray that constantly. Lord, give me discernment. I think the body of Christ really needs it in the days that we're living in. It's daily. Give us wisdom and give us discernment.
Yeah.
For what we're, in and what we need to know. I think that's very important.
Yeah. Wisdom is something that is powerful. I've always prayed for wisdom, and God's always shown me, well, I'm giving it to you. You just don't like the way I give it to you.
That's true. We don't always like the way He shows us things.
Because it comes through, you fail forward to success, and it's in those very hard, difficult times where we have a choice to grovel and complain and to stay down, or to take it and turn it and say, okay, God, what are you teaching me in this?
Yes.
Because it's through that wisdom, I've learned that wisdom is gained.
That's good.
But discernment, that is something you have to be listening.
Yeah.
You really have to be listening to the voice of God. You've got to get to know that voice so well that when that discernment rises up, that something says, oh, that's, maybe that's not right. And I'll share later a little bit of how I've used it just in, how it has come. It saved me in trying to maneuver this new life of mine for the last 5 years.
Yeah.
Okay. Truly saved me. So I will I'll explain that later.
Well, we want to hear. So what are some challenges that you've had to face along the way in life's journey?
Besides the challenge of healing and forgiving myself, which was a very long journey to take after having an abortion, and once that was done, everything else was pretty smooth riding, except for I lived a life of 30 years with someone that I knew wasn't in love with me. I knew that. He loved me as a friend, but there was no loving relationship. It just was not there. And having to learn that no matter what I did, no matter how perfect I tried to be, no matter how I tried to implement all the Bible studies about how to be a good wife and all those things, none of that was going to work unless He wanted it to work. And so it would be, I kind of shared with you, there would be a time that I was in Israel, and all the things that my spiritual giftings heightened when I was in Israel.
Nice.
The more I was there, the stronger they got. And one night I was in Jaffa, which is where Jonah was sent out, and I went out to see a sunset. because I love sunrises and sunsets.
Yeah.
And especially there on the Mediterranean. Oh my goodness. It is just amazing. And I'm standing there and I hear this voice. I mean, it was like somebody walked behind me quickly and whispered in my ear, "You're divorced." And I was like, "No, I'm not divorced. I'm very married." And I was wrestling with it. And I said, "Papa," as I looked around and there was nobody around me, I was like, "Papa, what do you mean I'm divorced? You know I'm married." And then I saw papers, and they were marriage certificates.
So this was like a vision that the Lord showed you, or a picture.
At first it was a voice, and then a vision came.
Okay.
And this vision was of papers, and it's like a portrait that you're watching. At least for me, it's like a portrait. And so I see the papers, and then I see my husband, and I see myself. And in the center, kind of behind, well, actually not the center, but behind all that, I see God. And I realized what he was saying to me, because I was hearing the voice. Man makes the papers, which creates either the marriage or the divorce. Man makes all that. So, but he was focusing on the marriage. I am the one who created marriage. I bring the people together. And he said, "And I bring them apart." And I was like, oh. And I mean, it was exciting at first, and then it just, reality started to set in. And I'm like, "But Papa," and I went home, went back to the States, and it would be 2013 that I would be told I was getting a divorce.
So how long after this vision and hearing
It was probably a couple years.
Okay.
For about 5 years prior to 2013, I knew there was real trouble going on. I mean,
so you sensed something. It wasn't like out of the blue.
And I was praying, but it was after that divorce, telling me I was divorced, that I had a dream one night at home, and I entered into a school gymnasium, and my grandchildren, which at that time I think I only had one grandchild, was on stage performing, and my kids were sitting on the ends and inward, and they had this seat sit for me. And when I came down the aisle to sit down, I see my husband. But it felt weird. It was like we weren't together. And then I see this woman with dark hair sitting next to him. And she gets up to leave to go to the bathroom, but she says something to him. And I remember in my dream thinking, oh, he must be with her. And when she went past, she looked at me and kind of glared, and then she walks off, walks down the aisle. Then she comes back, and in the meantime, he had been talking to me, asking me how was life, and what are you doing? And I said, I've been traveling to Israel still, and blah, blah, blah. And the dream so bothered me that I told my husband, I said, we really need to protect our marriage. Because I knew that God said we were divorced, but I didn't tell my husband that. Because I'm still trying to keep the marriage. Sure. I'm fighting for that marriage.
Right.
And I said, we really need to guard and protect ourselves from this. And then things would not get better. And in 2013, he would tell me that was it. He was going to file for separation. And I would later find out, because God told me to go to the office and look, and da-da-da-da-da. He filed for divorce. What was the real miracle in that? it wasn't a miracle to get divorced because I believe in marriage. But the healing in that was God began to prepare me for it years before by telling me, it's okay,
Yeah.
you're divorced. It wouldn't be, I would continue to fight for that marriage and pray and do everything I could, even after he filed for filed for divorce. And God would come to me when I'm driving down the road and say, Tani, can I change a heart? And I would say, well, of course, Papa. And he'd say, but Tani, can I change a heart that doesn't ask me? And well, of course not. So if I can't change a heart that hasn't asked me or isn't willing for me to change, what makes you think you can change a heart that doesn't want to be changed?
Wow.
And I realized at that moment that I was to give up. Later, the years would go and I would be divorced and I would be in Israel, and God would begin the healing process so that I could be, really the healing process of I could be ready for who God has for me.
Good.
And Israel is a place where mighty things happen. You cannot go to Israel and not be changed.
Yay.
And you can't go to Israel and have anything hiding because it will be revealed.
Wow.
God's not, the thing I love about him the most is he's not going to leave us to our own detriment. He's going to reveal so he can use. And, you know, one of the greatest miracles, and it's the one I love to share, of going to Israel is, and I say this because if there's anyone in your audience that is praying and fighting and desiring to have a child, as an adoptive mom, I know how wonderful that can be and how hard it can be. But I also know that God can bring a miracle. My daughter, my oldest daughter, was married, and she had a health issue, and a surgery that was performed on her didn't go bad, but anyway, they did something that could hinder her ability to either get pregnant, or if she did get pregnant, keep the child within her. And they told her about 3 years that she would have to be able to get pregnant. She had told her husband, and he said, well, I don't want to have children right now. And it would be a year later, and he would walk out on her and leave her. And
Wow.
she was devastated, absolutely devastated, crushed. He left her with a mountain of debt that she didn't know about, and she began the process of rebuilding her life. Flash forward 3 years, 2011. I was going to be hosting a tour in January of 2011.
Israel.
To Israel. And I have a dear friend from the Samaria area, very religious, sweet lady, and she was prophetically calling my daughter onto that trip. And she kept asking, is Bryn going to be on the trip? And I say, I don't know. I mean, we'd gone through an economic collapse here, and I couldn't afford to pay for her flight and stuff, and I was trying to figure things out. So I just don't know. And she prophesied and said, I see Bryn like a little mouse with pink ears, a gray sweater, and gray boots on the trip, and there will be 18 people. I'm trying to remember it word for word. And 18, Tani, in Hebrew means life. And I said, okay. And that was what this person didn't know. The only thing I got my daughter for Christmas that year was a gray sweater.
Oh, wow.
So I called my daughter immediately at work, And I said, sweetheart, what are you wearing today? She goes, I'm wearing the gray sweater you bought me, and I've got my black leggings on, and I've got some gray boots on. And I said, sweetheart, do you have pink ears on by any chance? And she goes, what? And I said, honey, if you could go to Israel, would you want to go? Yeah. I said, if you could go on this trip, would you want to go? And she goes, well, I'd have to see if I can get time off. She calls her boss. She's given the time off. A sequence of events happen. Bryn is going to come to Israel, and she's going to be there the day after the tour arrives. She arrives in Israel on January 18th. Now remember.
Oh, 18.
18 means life.
Cool.
Bryn's birthday is January 18.
Oh.
And the first place she visits in Israel is Hebron, where the first life is buried.
Oh,
Adam
wow.
and Eve, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Sarah, they're all buried in Hebron, and there
Wow.
she is where the first life
Wow.
were buried.
Wow.
So this was not a planned sequence of events, nothing. This was God moving and bringing her. On that trip, we always went to Shiloh, and that was where Hannah prayed her prayer. And
Oh, wow.
the tour guide asked me to read the prayer, and as I'm reading it, I'm seeing Bryn. And as we walked away, I laid my hand on her shoulder, and I just said, Papa, if it could be so. Now, mind you, she wasn't married.
Oh.
And at this point, she
That's
didn't
quite
even know.
stepping out in faith.
She didn't even know.
Hold that thought for
Okay.
a moment. For those of you that are not familiar with the story of Hannah in the Bible, she was barren, which means she did not have any children, and she couldn't bear children. She couldn't get pregnant.
Right.
And she went day and night in the temple, and she cried out to God for, I don't know, a long, long time, and said that if you give me a child, I will give it back to you, dedicate it to you. And she did that. So that's the story of Hannah in the Bible. And now this is where her daughter is and is doing this prayer. So now we're on page with you.
There you go. Thank you for that.
Yes.
Because it's all in my mind. I
Sure.
know what the stories,
Sure.
and I forget. But so you're right. We're right there. I've read the scriptures, and I can see my daughter. It's like I can feel her heart crying this out. And I walk away, as we walk away to head down and look at some other areas where the first tabernacle was built and such. I laid my hand on her and I just said, oh, Papa, if it could be so. Now, mind you, I'll go back and say, she was not married at the time. It would be a year later, Bryn would come to us and tell us she met a wonderful man. He has 2 children from a previous marriage. She still didn't know whether she would get pregnant or not. It just so happened in the year that she was getting married, I was doing a tour to Israel. That was actually 2013. I was doing a tour in September, so they had a couple of dates they could plan the wedding because the wedding was going to be at our house.
Oh.
So they chose a random date, August 18th.
I knew you were going to say 18. Cool.
August 18th.
Wow.
So we have this beautiful wedding, and my dear sister in Israel had sent a letter that she wanted read because she was there as a part of this whole journey in Bryn's life. And so we had this beautiful wedding, and then I would come home from a trip to Israel a year later, and Bryn would come over with a T-shirt on.
Oh,
And she was pregnant.
nice.
I was,
Exciting.
of course, jumping up and
Sure.
down. I was thrilled.
Yeah.
And then, because what wasn't supposed to happen, happened. It defied everything. And the she was under a special doctor, And he said, don't worry. He said, we're going to put a stitch in you and you're going to be just fine. He said, I'm going to take care of you. You're going to have this baby. And on January 2nd, my grandson was born.
Oh.
And I got to be there.
That's
and I got to coach him out.
Oh.
And when they laid him in her arms, her husband and her, she looked at, I'm going to cry big time here.
Sorry.
Looked at me and they said, Mama, his name is Boaz.
Oh, wow.
He is our Redeemer. And it's the kinsman Redeemer is who Boaz is.
Yes.
And
wow. Gives me chills.
it is, she did what Hannah did. And in that moment, and he is a powerful little boy, living up to the title of, I've researched Boaz a lot, and living up to his personality and everything.
Yeah.
It would be a year later, on September 18th, Caroline would be born.
Oh, wow.
And God gave to her the deepest desires of her heart when man said, you're not going to have this. And this was years after the 3-year mark.
Wow.
So she was blessed with a beautiful husband, a wonderful husband who loves her dearly, and given 2 beautiful children who are just a joy. I mean, anybody that goes to my Facebook will see that.
Yeah.
I've
seen some of those pictures. It's great. I love my grandkids too.
But that was the miracle of life.
Yeah.
God said, you know, my girlfriend prophesied that trip was going to be about life. Everybody on that trip sent me a note even later. One, a marriage was going down the tubes. And God restored and brought life back into that marriage. And they are happily married today.
Wow. That's cool.
There's just, miracles happen every day in Israel. It's a miracle that they are, this small country surrounded by people who hate them, survive. But they do.
Yeah.
And as I said to you earlier, you know, the beauty of God and his ability to heal and to do what he chooses to do in our life, no matter what choices or paths we take, he will do what he plans to do. And he only wants our best. And I look at Israel, who is my strength. In their story is my strength in times of trouble, because they came to a land broken, abused, filled with disease, poor. And today, if you look 70 years later, they have built a mighty nation that has taken 200 and some years for us to build. You go to San Francisco, you see Tel Aviv. You go to New York, you see Tel Aviv. You go to Eastern Washington, and you will see Beersheba. It's everywhere I go, I can see Israel in the nation. And it is this beautiful, thriving place surrounded by people who hate them, but in it is life. It's life. And that is the greatest miracle that I have found, is life.
That's good. Yeah, I've heard that their vegetables are larger than anywhere else, their fruits and things, because they are thriving.
The land flowing with milk and honey.
I've also heard that, you know, because they say that's one of the safest places to be on earth, and people have said that from the moment they got off the plane, you could feel like a protective bubble around Israel. And if you think about it, for all the countries that would love to destroy them and annihilate them, there's got to be a heavy hand from God of protection on that country, or they would be non-existent.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, the Arab countries around them could easily take them over, but no, there is, and you can hear from military leaders who have served in the different wars of the miracles that happen, of things happening when, you know, the enemy is on top of them and yet doesn't see them. you know, and it's like, what? But you're right. I mean, and if you read, God says he's going to bring them back from the, he's going to call them from the four corners of the earth, and he has. The many prophecies that have been fulfilled are powerful.
Yeah.
But you won't really experience that until you get there, you know, and you don't get to see that. And that's been the beauty of being immersed in the Word, and it's in the soul. When you're there walking, you begin to see it. Like,
comes to life for
it
you.
does.
I would
was in, where was I? Jerusalem, maybe. And I was out walking. I love to walk. So I'm out walking, and I hear this laughter. And I look over, and it's a old man and a young boy sitting on a bench, and they're just laughing. And there's the scripture, I can't remember if it's in Isaiah, that talks about the old men teaching the younger men, and where the children will be playing in the streets. And I'm going, it's happening.
Yeah.
It's happening.
You experienced it.
I mean, it is.
Very cool.
Yes, the vegetables, you will actually taste them.
Yay.
The food there is so flavorful, and I'm not sure if you're there during strawberry season, but boy, if you are, get a strawberry. You'll never.
Okay.
Oh
I love strawberries too.
And yes, some of the vegetables are very big, and some are really small. So celery, very small. We got huge stalks of celery. Theirs is very small, but a radish is huge.
Interesting. Okay. Well, you've certainly give us quite an encouraging word on Israel, and even promoted it to where people might want to now take a trip and check it out for themselves. And I did hear that last year it was the largest ever amount of tourists coming into Israel.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's good. Well, we're running out of time, but I would like you to take a look at that camera and do a prayer how the Lord leads you over this audience listening today.
Father, I come before you, and I just ask that you would put a hedge of protection around everybody watching this, that you would touch their hearts with whatever it is that might be burdening them. Father, if there are marriages that are broken, may they be healed. Father, may they turn to each other and both choose to heal. Father, I ask that if there's anybody desiring and seeking and wanting a child, that they would cry out to you. And Father, that they would know that you can do amazing things. It may not come the way you think, but you can bring the desires of the heart. You can bring life into their bodies. And Father, I just ask for a return of joy and laughter in our nation, that bitterness and anger that is pervading over us, that would be lifted off, and that true joy and laughter would return. And know that you know that God is the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. He is unchanging. He is slow to anger, and he is abounding in great love. Amen.
Amen.